Welcome, everyone, to Real Estate on the Up, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the real estate world in Orlando. I'm your host, Kyle Madoran, and on this show, we're all about pulling back the curtain with the unfiltered truth about real estate. We're not just here to sell houses. We're here to provide concierge-style service because everyone loves being treated like a VIP. This podcast is your go-to resource for transparency, integrity, and the knowledge you need to make smarter real estate decisions. Whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time homebuyer, we've got you covered. So buckle up and get ready to move up in the world of real estate. It's time for Real Estate on the Up. Charlie Peterson has been a licensed realtor for 5 years and achieved phenomenal success in that short period of time. Previously part of a real estate team, Charlie now runs his own residential team, focusing on sales in Seminole and Volusia counties, and is honored to be among the top 3% of agents in Central Florida, which is very amazing for being in the industry that short period of time. I'm excited to bring him on the show because I think this is going to be an inspiring episode. So here he is, Charlie Peterson.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle, for having me on. I'm excited.
Excellent. Well, we're very, very happy to have you because I think that young agents like you have a unique perspective on the business and you kind of renew the lifeblood of the industry. I think there's a lot of older agents out there who are thinking of maybe it's time to move out of the business. Maybe it's time to hang up the license at home instead of at a brokerage because it's so many changes taking place right now. We're in a period of rapid flux where we've got the NAR lawsuits that have happened. There's a lot of technology changes. So I think we certainly need agents like you who are getting into the business and approaching it from the right perspective to help keep things moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I'm 26 years old and started when I was 21 years old. So talking about just starting at a young age, there were some challenges there, but when you approach it just as anybody, when you approach real estate as your first year, like we all did, just absorbing everything we can to be a student of the market, you really benefit your customers like that. So whether 30 years in or 5 years in, when you're still studying like it's your first year and taking in information, you're going to be in good shape to give your customers the best service they need.
That is a great way to approach it. So approaching it from the right perspective it's interesting to hear someone who's so new in the business, have the sort of outlook that you do, because I think a lot of people, when they first think about getting into real estate, entering the industry, they think it's more of a sales position. You're selling people on houses, you're talking people into things, that sort of thing. But I think a lot of agents are surprised once they begin to get the experience under their belt and actually do some transactions. It's not like that at all. So tell us a little bit about your perspective of how you practice real estate.
Yes, it is. Well, I can't say that I came up with this, but it's relationships over transactions. So when you really hone in on just the grand scheme of what real estate is, we connect both buyers and sellers. Sellers want to sell, buyers want to buy. But when we look at the big picture there, we're not going to force somebody to buy something that they don't want or what they don't need. If you force somebody into that, one, you're going to look like a salesman. Two, you're going to do a disservice by that customer and your business will run dry because they'll tell you, hey, they forced me into something, they were salesy and so forth. But I want to focus on what that individual needs. So based on that, they're going to have, just like a snowflake, they're going to have a very unique need for their family, for their investment, for selling that property, whatever it is. And I can't speak in generalities very big about that because they have a very specific need for that one customer. And so I approach it on a case-by-case scenario. What is it that you need? Why do you need to do it? When do you need to do this? And is this even the best thing for you at this moment? And learning all of that, if there's any way that I could deny somebody or help encourage them to hold off or shift their direction a different way, I would much rather lose a transaction than help somebody get into a wrong situation.
I love that. You gain a customer for life that way, even if the time might not be right today. I think that's a wonderful way to approach it. Work-life balance is something that people who are new in the industry struggle with because you work for yourself. You don't really have a boss,
Right.
over your shoulder watching everything that you do. You really have to have internal motivation and the ability to organize your life in such a way where you can dedicate yourself to work when needed, but also you don't want to sacrifice everything. I think you're a father. Is that correct?
I've got, yep, I'm married. I got married just before I started real estate, about a month before I started real estate,
Oh,
actually.
you had a lot going on at that point in your life. That's
So I had a lot
yeah.
going on. I jumped right
Oh,
in. So, yep.
very
So, but
good.
now I got married right before I started real estate, about a month prior. And now I've got a 3-year-old little girl and just about a 3-month-old little girl as well. So I've got two little kiddos at
Well,
home. And
congratulations. That's great. Yeah. So you
yeah.
know as well as anyone how important it is to try and balance work with a family life. So how do you approach that?
Well, I had a very wise coach, Danny. He told me work will expand to the time that you allow it. So I wanted to be very clear with my customers and set expectations that, hey, there are times when there's emergencies in which we may talk after 7 p.m. But before 7 p.m., that's when we need to get business done. Because ultimately, what happens, and think about any other profession out there, they close down their shop at 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at the latest. So what good is it that we are doing after 7 o'clock? And I guess there's one-off scenarios in which somebody works a different shift and so forth, and that's the time, but that's fine. But for the most part, I cut myself off and I set the expectations for my customers that, hey, this is when I'm spending time with my family. This is my time off. And it's worked out great. I've really realized that consumers actually appreciate that. Because what happens if you take a call at 10:30 p.m., they're frantic about something. Well, now they expect you to pick up the phone every time at 10:30. And when you don't
Yeah.
pick up the phone at 10:30 because you're tired of taking calls at 10:30 at night, well, now they're disappointed in you. And so ultimately, getting that clear expectation and setting that up with your customer makes the entire process easier. And then two, my wife loves it because I'm at home and I'm not working while I'm at home.
Right. I'm sure she's very appreciative of that. So
Yes,
managing expectations, that was a big part of what you just said, managing
yes.
expectations. And I think in our business right now, with all the changes that are happening, that is becoming more important than ever before.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, because working with buyers has changed over the last few months. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about how you're managing expectations for buyers that you're working with and how it's a little different now than it was previously.
Well, realistically, we have, and this is something I've not always done, is getting a buyer broker agreement signed, but now that's becoming mandatory moving forward. But what I did beforehand, it still carries through to today, is if I have a customer that says they want to buy a house, if I'm not asking them a series of questions to really get down to the nitty-gritty of what they are looking for in a home, we'll be on a wild goose chase. And so for their own stress levels, for their own sanity, for our sanity, if we don't get to the bottom of it, then we'll be all over the place. But if we really hone in, we're not going to be seeing more than 5, 6 properties and before knowing that, hey, this is the one. And if we get to that point of seeing 5, 6 properties and still not there, let's circle back and really get into what your priorities are with this purchase. So that way it's just easier for the consumer.
Yeah, you
And
keep fine tuning, you keep digging deep to make sure that you
yeah,
completely understand their needs. I love
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
And you're
because
absolutely right. It shouldn't take more homes than that if you're really digging as deep
yeah.
as you can.
Yep, yep, absolutely. And I'm not afraid with my customers to ask them, if they send me a property, because nowadays everybody sends you properties from Zillow or Realtor.com or
Yeah.
wherever it is. And it's the same properties you sent them on the MLS portal sometimes too, but they'll send you a property and I'll ask them, hey, this doesn't match up with what you told me beforehand. Are you sure you really wanted to go take a look at this? And so, anyways, that prohibits a lot of showings. It stops a lot of showings because they're like, oh, you know what? You're right. We wouldn't want that, you know.
Right.
And so just getting the expectations clear that, hey, we don't want to go look at 30 houses because at the end of the day, if you're looking at more than 10 houses, you're creating this perfect house from all these that you've seen that doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
so we don't want to get into a confusing spot.
Right, right. And there's so many things that we can do as buyers agents to help that aren't
Yeah.
available through tools on Zillow or Realtor.com or those places. And
Oh,
buyers
absolutely.
agents can help
Yeah.
really listen. And I know that's a big part of, like you were saying, meeting with the customer, really understanding their needs, and
Yeah.
then using that to help craft a custom search that is so much more in depth than what's available for them online. And I think that's one of the best ways that agents can be valuable to their customers, in addition to all of the other things that they do to help throughout the process. But setting up that initial search, So many people who are out there in the public think that you can just go online and do everything that way that agents can do. Agents have many, many more tools available to them than the public has to make
Absolutely.
that as custom a search as they possibly can.
Absolutely, yeah. And data between the MLS and Zillow and all these IDX feeds. So IDX is the syndication of data from the MLS over to these major platforms. Sometimes data gets misconstrued in that connection. Sometimes data is transferred wrong, or maybe even data is input wrong. And so when you've got hyper local knowledge about a particular area, particular neighborhood, and you've really understood what your consumers' needs are, you're able to use that knowledge to look outside the boundaries of just a 3-bed, 2-bath home or a 4-bed, 2-bath home. You can look outside those boundaries and say, hey, I know this is a 2-bedroom, but it's got an office, and I know that would fit what you're looking for. That's not going to pop up in the search that you have saved on your portals. But using that hyper local knowledge of the neighborhoods and the areas that they're looking to move in really sets yourself apart.
Absolutely does. There's another thing that you and I had talked about previously that I thought was inspiring and something all agents should aspire to is the idea of continual learning, of being a student and continuing to fill yourself with knowledge because the business is always evolving and there's always more that we can learn to be better service providers for our customers. So, where do you feel is the most important place to go to gather knowledge that you can then instill in your business and share with your customers?
Yeah, there's a few different areas that you can go to, and I like to utilize more of my personal connections or personal sources with these vendors and so forth. But for me particularly, when studying the market, I like to study on a hyper market version. So if I'm looking at inventory or if I'm looking at a number of transactions, I'm going almost on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis because I do with a lot of listings. So if somebody asks me, Charlie, how's the market? Well, it's doing well, but what do you have in mind? What kind of market are you interested in learning more about? And so through that, I can use my hyper local knowledge rather than Orlando as a whole or Volusia County as a whole, because you and I both know that DeBerry is going to act different than Daytona or New Smyrna Beach.
Definitely. What's happening in Seminole County is vastly different than Osceola County. Yes.
Absolutely. So I approach it a little bit more on a hyper local knowledge, and I really hone in where I practice real estate in a hyper local area. So that's as far as stats, inventory, and supply, I keep it hyper local and on a customer by customer basis. Then from there, as far as what's going on in the insurance world, what's going on in the mortgage world, I call my vendors up for that. And I utilize their expertise for it. And what are you seeing here in Volusia County? What are you seeing here in Seminole County? What are the difference between getting an HOI, HO3 policy in Seminole County versus Volusia County? What are the differences there? And utilizing those connections there, it really sets yourself apart. Because, like I said, when you speak in generalities of Central Florida as a whole, while it's not inherently bad, we could say something that prohibits or gives false information to a customer that needs something in a particular spot.
You're absolutely right. And it's so massive. I know that's one of the things that when people relocate to the area, it's hard for them to
Yeah.
understand. But Walt Disney World is
Yeah.
twice the size of Manhattan. And
Yeah.
that's just a tiny sliver of
Yeah.
Central Florida. So it's really, really the scale is much larger than most people realize.
Right. Right. Yeah. And you take, for example, there's a neighborhood I do a fair amount of business in called Victoria Park, and it's surrounded by new construction communities and still builders within the community.
Hmm.
And when you look at that neighborhood versus, let's say, for example, a neighborhood down in Lake Mary, like Timaquan, you compare those two neighborhoods, they both have a golf course in it, both are fairly large neighborhoods, but they behave totally different right now in today's market. And you've got a high inventory level in one neighborhood and a lower inventory, high demand scenario in another neighborhood. Well, if somebody asks me, hey, Charlie, how's the market? And they're from Victoria Park, and I tell them, it's great, multiple offers, we're seeing over asking price offers. It's not true in Victoria Park, but it's true in Timaquan. So I approached all my studying more so on a hyper local level.
Yeah, I think that's smart and certainly massively helpful to your customers as well to look
Yeah.
at things that way instead of the generality as a whole, because you can
Yeah.
have misleading data if you look at it that way.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Let's go back and talk about your early days when you were just a baby realtor 5 years ago. And because everyone's got stories of what it was like when they were first getting started. So, looking at how you got started in the business, you've achieved great success in a short period of time. What did you use to begin building your business up to obtain customers and generate those leads and those closings?
Well, I have done things a little bit different than the norm. Honestly, it's old school. I have been the real estate resource via door knocking. I've done some cold calling, done postcards, but really to get it up and running, it was open houses and door knocking for those open houses. Just introducing myself to the neighbors, giving them, just having the perspective of I'm a stranger on their doorstep, and how do I give value to them? Because who's this guy standing on my doorstep? Oh, he's a real estate agent giving me a market update on my entire neighborhood. Oh, let's look at what's sold here. So I've always tried to figure out how do I give value in order to receive business. So door knocking, open houses, postcards, and circle prospecting, cold calling. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of open houses because I think that getting face to face with customers
Yep.
is one of the best ways to begin establishing rapport and working with them. So I'm a big believer in that as well. Um,
Yep.
and so when you're approaching doing an open house, you mentioned door knocking, which is
Yeah.
something that I know a lot of agents are kind of scared of. So you've had success with that, obviously. Tell us a little bit about your technique. So you said you hand out market updates for what's happening in the neighborhood when you do that?
Yeah, yeah. Because and again, I'm reminding myself all the time, I am some stranger that just knocked on their door. They're thinking, who
Right.
in the
Yeah.
world is this? So it's really super quick. I have a flyer put together with the open house that I'm holding. And on the backside of that flyer is all the properties that have sold in the last 6 months to a year in the neighborhood. And so I knock on the door. Hey there, I'm Charlie. I'm a realtor for your neighbors, Joe and Susie, down the street here. Just want to introduce myself. I'm holding an open house, and I put together a whole market update here on the back side here. Here's everything that's sold in the last year. Feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to help you out. And then I turn around and walk away. Now, if I see that they're really studying the sheet, I'll hang out a little bit more and say, it looks like what's piqued your interest. And it just start the conversation from there. But it's very low sales. And
No, it's brilliant. You're providing value
yep,
without having it be some sales conversation
yeah,
or yeah, trying to pitch them on something, which I think is everyone's fear when someone rings the doorbell. What are they trying to sell me? That's always it. So
yeah,
I think that's great is you're giving them something without there being any sort of a pressure to have a conversation about something else.
yeah, yep.
Great idea.
I let them lead the conversation. If they have any interest or any questions or anything like that, I let them bring that up. I don't want to sit there and get three no's from them and make them mad at me for being on their doorstep. That's not my goal. I just want to give them value and let them know that I'm just heading out and they can always contact me. And what happens with that is I'll just have natural conversations at the doorstep, or I'll get random callbacks 4 months later from somebody to talk to for 30 seconds at the doorstep, but they held on to that flyer. And that's happened numerous occasions. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Now, obviously, you've achieved great success, but you've also certainly had some challenges as well, as we all have in the business. So, what has your biggest challenge been within real estate since you started 5 years ago?
Well, you could look at this in two different ways. Challenges in a transaction and then challenges in just running a business. And so on a transactional level, COVID posed some interesting challenges. I had one deal. This was interesting. There was a wedding that had taken place and nobody knew about it. My customer at the time didn't even remember it taking place decades ago. So in order to get the deal closed, we had to get a document essentially notarized from the legal spouse who
Oh my
happened to be in
gosh.
a foreign country.
Oh
And
no.
and
Oh,
so this was height of COVID. This is day of closing, by the way. Day of
oh,
closing, the height of COVID. We'd already been issued the clear to close at this point in time. And this popped up. So we ended up negotiating a large non-refundable escrow and 2 weeks to get this document shipped back from this foreign country. And talk about some stress there. But at
yeah.
the time, the intercity travel in the foreign country was shut down. So we had to get this lady over to the US Embassy in our foreign country to get the document signed off on and then
Notarized. Yep.
it back. Yep. So anyways, that came back and thankfully just in the nick of time, we were
Wow.
able to close the property and so forth, but we were able to keep the sellers involved through the non-refundable EMD, the escrow deposit there. and my consumer was willing to take the risk in order to get the job done. And that was probably the more unique situations I've ever had.
Yeah, I would say holding that together was a high stress transaction. Yeah, never
Yeah,
a dull moment.
yeah. At the time, I was 22 years old, and I'm thinking, man, this is height of COVID. I've been doing real estate for just over a year. We've got this that just popped up, and I'm dealing with a foreign embassy in a foreign country. This is just wild. So real estate can take you all kind of different directions. But challenges as far as like a business, and I say a business because I think there's a lot of misconception, but real estate is a business, and a lot of agents, I think, fail to look at it as a business. And so just managing both expenses, making sure you're not overspending, making sure you're profitable, making sure that you have enough leads that come in to keep yourself going. And through all of that, sometimes the biggest challenge can be is, do I have enough business to make sure that my customers know that my business is not dependent upon them? Making sure that they never feel that way. And so that can be a challenge at times. So just making sure that as you've got a business with enough coming up that you never put that pressure on a consumer to close a deal
Oh,
is
yes,
can
absolutely.
be
You don't want to be that type of agent. You're right. Absolutely.
right, right. Yeah, I tell my customers all the time, like, look, my business is not dependent on you doing something. I am not the one buying or selling, not the one doing this transaction. This is all you. I'm just here to help you, guide you through the process.
Right.
But you need leads and you need business in order to get to that point.
So
Yeah.
speaking of business coming up, we get asked a lot about what do we think is coming down the road in the real estate industry over the next few months. We have a
Yeah.
lot of buyers who might be sitting on the sideline, kind of waiting for the right time. Sellers kind of unsure about whether or not this is the right time to list. Based on your experience in the marketplace right now, what do you think we're going to be experiencing over the next few months?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you exactly what was going to happen. From what I see, though, I think there's a lot of focus on what's going to happen in the next 3 months. And I do like to challenge that a little bit. Why focus on the next 3 months for a transaction that you're likely supposed to be in for decade plus? Does the next 3 months really matter? So if you can afford a property, if you've got the ability to get into a situation, it matches everything you need, you've got the affordability for it, you've got stable jobs, forget about the next 3 months. Look at the next decade, you
That's a
know.
great way to look at it.
And so I think there's a lot of misconception about that. Now, if you're looking in the next 3 months and you said, I really want to buy now, I'm really worried about this. After I get done telling you about forget about the next 3 months, think about the next decade. If you're looking to buy right now and you're not thinking that you're going to be in that house for at least 2 to 3 years, figure out what you want to do for the next 2 to 3 years, what location you want to be in first before you buy. I don't want you to buy and have to turn around right away and sell. But anyways, if you do really want to buy or sell in the next 3 months, think about it this way. There is so much pent up demand right this second for what's going to happen in this election, what's going to happen to rates. Right now, buyers have leverage to negotiate more. There's higher inventory levels in many places across the Central Florida area. You've got higher leverage. As a seller, you've got a little bit of a disadvantage in that standpoint. There's less demand. So if you really want to sell, by all means, closings happen every single day and we can get that done for you. But if you've got a property that you don't need to sell and you really want to maximize the value of it, maybe in the next 6 months you'll have a better market. Maybe not. But if you really are ready and comfortable to sell it, why wait?
Yep. Unfortunately, none of us have that crystal ball that I think some
Yeah,
people in the public wish we did. And certainly there are many times I wish I had one. But
right.
by giving them the data, like you're talking about before, you have market data, you can show them what's happening now and what has
Yes.
happened over the last few months as an indicator of this is what the trend is showing.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
although when things do happen, there's a chance that the market shifts rather rapidly. Do you want to be caught in a situation that's not as favorable?
Yeah.
Because as a buyer,
Yeah.
if all these other buyers jump back into the marketplace when rates come down, it could make
Yeah.
things, although possibly less expensive for you on a monthly payment, you might have to pay much more, and it negates that advantage in rate. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And if I have that consultation with a buyer that's thinking about selling in a year from now, I'm like, well, then don't buy. Don't buy
No,
yet.
you shouldn't be buying if you need to
That's
sell.
always been the rule. That's
Yeah.
always been the rule. Don't buy if you're looking at selling in a short period of time.
Yeah.
But so what, let's say you bought right now and the market just tanked 25%. So you've got $1 million property that's now worth 750,000. Well, when you bought it at the time, Were you thinking long term that you're going to be there for a decade? Did you have a stable job? Well, if it tanked 25% in a year, that's doomsday scenario, that's worst case scenario. You're not even planning on moving that next year, right? You don't have to look at the market at that moment. You look at the market for when you planned on selling, the time that you planned on moving on. And so when you're looking as a first-time home buyer or a buyer that's looking to upsize for the long term, the next 3 months has zero effect on you.
Yeah. You need to keep in mind your overall goal, the end goal of what you're trying to achieve. And I
Yeah.
think people get scared. I mean, there's scary stories in the media, and
Yeah.
there are those doomsday sort of people who say, "Oh, the
Yeah.
sky's falling, we're about to crash, the market's going to fall apart," which
Yeah.
I certainly do not think is the case if you look at all the data.
I
But
don't see any indicators of it. No
yeah.
way. Yeah.
But there's people out there and you hear these things and it is scary. When you think about how much money you save for years and years to be able to purchase a home. You invest almost everything you have in making that a place that you can call your own and get out
Right.
of that rental cycle. It's a scary prospect to listen to people who are then telling you, "Oh, are you sure you want to buy? Because the market's going to fall apart."
I've been hearing the market's going to fall apart and the sky's going to fall for the last 5 years. I've heard that every single year, and the number of people who have waited and the number of callbacks I've gotten of Charlie, we wish we would have bought 3 months or 3 years ago. We wish we would have.
Mhm.
You told us that the market looked good then and so forth, and we wish we would have. But if you're comfortable with it and you've got the good long-term goal for what you're looking for, the next 2, 3 years doesn't matter. The next 4 years doesn't matter. A decade from now. And this is somebody taught me this too. If you look at any point in time in a 10-year span, market prices have never not recovered.
Hmm, that's
When you,
interesting.
you look in 10-year spans, think of like 2008 to 2018. There might be one-off scenarios where a couple communities, like I can think of one where the golf course shut down. But if you look at a 10-year span, prices always recovered. You think of
Yeah.
the worst of it back in 2005, 2006, 2007, people bought at a premium to 2018 timeframe, prices appreciated and came back.
Right.
In that meantime, they built up all that equity in their PMI or in their principal payments.
Yeah, that was such an anomaly. That was like a once in a lifetime sort of anomaly that
Right?
occurs. There are so many things that went wrong. And I
Yeah.
don't think we're going to be in that situation again. Similar though to COVID, how I think COVID was also possibly a once in a lifetime in the other direction where property
Oh,
values
absolutely. Yeah.
appreciated so quickly that I'm not sure we're ever going to see that sort of 20% to 40% appreciation annually that we were at that point, which was unheard of.
Right. Yeah. And of course, I'm a young guy. So I saw that happening. I was like, this is pretty wild. I've never heard of anything like this. Never heard of this. And multiple offers on every single property. And I don't foresee if interest rates, and I like to say this too, if interest rates drops down into the 4.5% range or low fives right now, that might be one of the worst things, in my opinion, that could happen to the market right now. And I say that with a grain of salt. If you're looking for affordability, I'm sorry that I'm saying that, but if interest rates came down that much, we would see a frenzy in the market. Prices would
Yep.
increase even more. And then when they turn around and increase interest rates to slow it down, that's when you would probably see a bigger effect on the market.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. I think that we don't need that at the moment. The market's actually fairly healthy right now. I wish rates would come down slightly to give people more confidence and they'd want to
Yeah,
get back in. But no, if we see rates drop that extent, we don't have enough inventory for all the people
yeah,
who'd want to get out there in the marketplace. Yeah, you're absolutely
right,
right.
right.
Yep.
They call it a reverse crash.
Right.
It'd
Yeah, we
go
don't want that.
through, yeah, through the moon again, kind of what happened
Right.
down in Venezuela, but it'd go through the moon. And then when the bottom drops out at that point, that's when you would see the prices come back down. But
You got it.
right now we are in a good market.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree. And for all of those people out there who would like to chat with Charlie and learn more about buying or selling real estate, he is a great resource and has really been an inspiration for younger agents to watch with all the success he's had since he joined 5 years ago, which is amazing. Charlie, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, my phone number, 386-259-0744. If you're a consumer looking for a home value report, looking for some comps for your property, go to the Peterson Group dot homes, HOMES. And if you don't mind, I do have a seller seminar coming up on August 10th. Not sure when this is going to air, but I've got a seller seminar on August 10th. If you're a consumer looking for a title rep, how to hold property title, insurance, or anything like that, got a seminar. We're going to have specialists come in and let's talk about the current trends in the market and give some insight onto what the NAR changes are coming up and give an insight to the consumers there as well at this event.
Very good. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us and for all of your time today. It was a great conversation and a lot of knowledge shared. So I really, really appreciate you being on the show.
You got it. Thank you so much for putting this together. I think this is a great tool for our consumers and other agents in the area.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in, everybody. Have a great day. As we conclude another eye-opening episode of Real Estate on the Up, I want to express my appreciation for joining us. Thank you for being a valuable part of the Real Estate on the Up community. Your time and engagement mean the world, so make sure you subscribe and leave a review. Your real estate goals are my priority, and my team and I are here to provide the personalized attention and service that have earned us high recognition. If you have questions, need guidance, or are ready to make a move, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm just a message away. I'm Kyle Madoran, one of Rate My Agent's top 100 in the United States, signing off. Until next time, take care and make those real estate dreams a reality.